Welcome to the Unnatural Leader, where we believe that leadership is a skill that can be trained and not an attribute with which we're born. I'm Andy Glenn, and my goal with these videos is to provide you an easy to access resource that will help you develop the tools to be a better leader. In my last video, I mentioned that I was going to spend this video talking about the mechanics of how I do my one-on-ones with my direct reports. Before I start, I want to take a minute and just reiterate why I believe that these one-on-ones are so critically important. There are four principal reasons that we do these one-on-ones. The first and most important is that it provides us an opportunity to improve our knowledge about our subordinate leaders and direct reports while simultaneously demonstrating to them that we care about them. While the importance of better getting to know the people that are working with and for us is probably self-evident, less so is the importance of caring about them. I had a conversation just this morning with a good friend and co-worker who, when he started off on his leadership journey, didn't fully grasp that, and in his own words, was a bit of a bull in a china shop. Over time, he learned that he got better results by demonstrating that he cared about his subordinates. And that's really what this is about, is it gives us that opportunity to improve their effectiveness. Simon Sinek has done some studies that demonstrate and show that when employees feel cared about, it improves certain chemicals in the brain, including but not limited to oxytocin, which is that closeness chemical. And the importance of that is then they are going to feel more loyal to you, and they're going to have that buy-in into you as a leader. So they're going to respect you more, they're going to try harder, and they're going to follow you better. So that's the first reason that we do these one-on-ones. The second is that it allows us to check on what they are working on, and then we can give them subtle course corrections to make sure that we keep them on task and working in the direction that we need and want them to. The third reason is that it provides us an opportunity to coach and develop them. And we're going to talk a lot more about that in future videos, as well as a little bit more here later in this video. The fourth reason might seem a little counterintuitive. Doing these one-on-ones is ultimately going to free up a lot of time for us. You probably already have people coming by your office once, twice, 10 times a day with little ankle biters. But over time, when we do these one-on-ones, they're going to start saving these ankle biters up and bring them to the one-on-one. The reason that they are coming to you with all these ankle biters or these menial tasks is because they need time with you. You are their leader, and that's what they're craving is some attention. But when we set aside 30 minutes where we are devoted directly and completely to them, they feel that closeness and that cared aboutness that is so critical to their well-being. And so now they're going to stop bringing you all of these things that can wait until the appointed time later in the week. So those are the four reasons that we're going to do this. Next, I'm going to talk about the mechanics of the one-on-one. So as far as the mechanics go, the first thing that we have to do is we have to schedule these one-on-ones every week, the same time, and then we have to protect that time. When we shift it around left and right, or earlier or later in the day, what happens is that it becomes almost dispensable in the mind of our direct reports. And so they don't feel the same importance that we want them to feel with these meetings. We want to protect this time as best we can because it's important to them and it's giving them an opportunity to give us a lot of information. As a result, it's also important to us. So I strongly encourage you to pick a time every week, the same time, when you think you can absolutely protect it and not have other interruptions pop up or other meetings that might arise that you would have to change your time for. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we want to keep it to 30 minutes. We don't want to run over and take longer than 30 minutes. If it's a little bit shorter, that's fine. but we really want to try and protect it at 30 minutes. The reason I say this, and I've struggled with this on my own, is because I'm a talker and I enjoy meetings, and I find them to be enjoyable, getting to spend time with my subordinates. But they've got other things that they want to and need to do later in the day. So they are counting on this being a 30-minute meeting because that's what it's scheduled as. So by protecting it as such, we're freeing them up to take care of the rest of the stuff that they need to later in. So we've gotten some of the rules of the mechanics out of the way, but how do we actually run the meeting? Well, it's going to be in 3 10-minute segments. The first 10 minutes is going to belong to your direct report. The second 10 minutes is going to be yours. And then the final 10 minutes is going to be oriented and focused on the future. So the first 10 minutes, as I said, is really belonging to your direct report or your subordinate. You're going to shut up and listen as best as possible. And I can't stress the importance of that enough. This is their opportunity to unload and dump into your lap anything that they've got going on, whether it be business or personal related. Remember that leaders don't just care about your performance at work, but if you think about the best leaders that you've ever encountered, they care about you as a person. So you need to let your subordinates unload their personal issues as well, and you need to listen to that as best as possible. So you're going to start this first 10 minutes by asking something simple such as, how are you, how are things, how's everything going, how's your work, something along those lines, an open-ended question about how they are doing. This is going to then prompt them to start talking. Now, don't be surprised at the first 3 to 5 of these one-on-ones. They kind of clam up a little bit and they don't want to open. Give it time. Once they feel that you actually do care about them, that you're invested in these one-on-ones, they will start to open up much, much more. Now, they are going to take this 10 minutes to give you updates about what they've been working on, what they're struggling with as far as work goes, or again, they might bring personal problems to you or personal situations to you. That's fine. Listen, right? What they need at this point in time is for you to listen. You're not going to jump in. You're not going to dominate this part of the conversation. They might ask you a question. Sure, answer it. But again, the important part here is that this is their time to really have the bosses here. So you want to make sure that you give it to them as best as possible. So the next mechanical thing that I want to talk about is that we need to make this meeting about them. We need to shut out other interruptions and really protect this 30-minute time while we're sitting across the room from them, or sitting across the desk, or sitting next to them, however we're positioned. So we need to make sure that we turn off our email, put our phone on silent. You could, if you have a landline, take it off of the cradle altogether so nobody can call. Regardless, we want to make sure that they understand that our attention is 100% focused on them. You're not going to pick up your phone. You're not going to look at it and say, oh, I'm not going to answer it because it's that person. That message that you're sending when you do that is that if it was somebody more important than who actually called, you would answer it. So you want to make sure that you try and shut out these distractions as much as possible, and that you're focused directly on your direct report at this point in time. You can certainly ask follow-up questions, and I would strongly recommend that you do. Don't be afraid of the silence. Let them squirm a little bit. They will keep talking, again, because you're the boss, and that's what they're going to figure at least. So let them deal with the silence a little. They'll just keep talking. However, don't be afraid to ask certain follow-up questions about the impact of what they're telling you, or about what they need, or about how you, the leader, can then support them. So that's the first 10 minutes of this conversation. The next 10 minutes belongs to you. This is your opportunity to give them updates on what you're hearing from higher up in the organization, things that you've observed, feedback. So this is really your time to kind of help steer them in based on their past performance and where you need them right now. You can assign tasks and delegate things at this point in time in the conversation as well. We're going to cover delegation further in later videos as well. The final 10 minutes of this meeting is going to be focused on the future, as I mentioned. This is an opportunity to find out what they want to be doing in the future, to help them arrange a plan to get there, to then kind of work on their development and kind of provide some of that mentorship that they need and some of that coaching. So you're not going to train them. That's not your principal job. You're not a trainer. You're their leader, but you're going to help them figure out the resources and a plan for their own future development so that they can continue to progress as well. One of the things that I've found with a lot of these one-on-ones is that rather than these nice 3 discrete bands of time, 10, 10, and 10, what usually winds up happening is they're going to take about 15 minutes for their portion, which is totally fine, and then I usually wound up taking about 15 on mine, and we would usually only hit kind of the future and development oriented things once a month. So once every 3 to 4 weeks, we would be able to dive into that a little bit more. Totally fine. If that's what happens, that's what happens. Ideally, we get these nice 3 10-minute segments. If it's 15 and 15, no worries. Doesn't matter. That's totally fine because you're still getting the most important parts, which is learning about them, learning about where they're at, and then providing them some guidance and some feedback. So that's totally fine. One more thing on this before we kind of wrap up this session on one-on-ones, which is how do we capture notes from this? These become important, and the notes become important because it gives us a chance to reflect when it comes time for annual performance evaluations and reviews, or if, God forbid, that their performance really kind of tank and we have to start looking at remedial actions. So we need to make sure that we take detailed notes, or really notes in general, that we can then reference later. And how I strongly encourage you to do it is with pen and paper. You could use a computer. What I've found, though, is remember that conversation about trying to shut out distractions. Even if you're not distracted and you're fastidiously taking notes, what they are thinking is that you're hiding behind a computer and that you're checking your email rather than focused on them. So I would strongly encourage you to pen and paper it. Maybe your organization has a developmental counseling form. Maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, no worries. You can just take a piece of paper. I would recommend a legal pad just for the size and divide it up into bands, kind of a 20% at the bottom for that future portion, and then more for them than for you. So you want to weight it again towards understanding that this conversation is subordinate oriented and really focused around your direct report more so than about you. So how it usually worked out for me is that in the week leading up to the one-on-one, I would pull out the form and I would put notes on things that I wanted to get feedback about into their portion, or excuse me, into my portion in the middle. And then it would be probably 2/3 of the way filled up, and then that other third would be closed out during the meeting. And then the large portion for them, I would try and capture as much information about what they're telling me, statuses, things like that, during the meeting. And that became very handy and very useful later on when it came time to reflect on how they did. So that is a quick overview of how I do my one-on-ones. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool, if not one of the most powerful tools that I have as a leader. I would strongly encourage you to follow suit and make sure that you are doing a weekly meeting, one-on-one, face-to-face, with whoever is working with you or for you, your direct reports, your subordinate leaders, and making sure that you are doing those 4 things, which is getting to know them better, demonstrating, while simultaneously demonstrating that you care, understanding where they're at in their work and providing course corrections, coaching and developing them, and then freeing up some time for yourself as a result of this. And again, that's probably counterintuitive. Trust me for now, try it, and you're going to find in a month or two that you're going to get a lot more free time. Even if you've got 10 directs, I would strongly encourage you to do this. Take an entire day in the middle of the week and just set it to these one-on-ones and see what happens. So that is it for this show. Again, I hope this was valuable to you and that you've gotten something tangible here out of this one. This is a little bit more mechanically oriented. Some of them will be more theory oriented, and then some of them will be like this, where we really want to get down nitty gritty on action steps that you can implement to become a better leader. So I think this is certainly one of those. Similar to this is the one about what email to send to a former boss to get that mentorship that we need as leaders. So there'll be a link here to that episode. I strongly encourage you to go check that one out if you haven't already seen it. And I'd also ask that if you're finding value in this, hit the subscribe button and share it as well with other people. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media you're into, because that really helps me out, reach a larger audience, and then there's that whole synergy that we're trying to get out of this program, which is have more stronger leaders across the board in all industries. Before I say goodbye, I want to make a special thanks to my good friend Henry Cartagena. Henry is a U.S. Army major, and he has shared these videos so far with some of his former directs and subordinates who are U.S. Army military police officers. So Henry, thank you so much for sharing it. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope that your MPs have all found value in this and that they're going to continue to watch and learn and share as well. With that, leaders, thanks so much. And that's a wrap for this week's episode of The Unnatural Leader.